Long ago, in a remote monastery, there lived a young monk who possessed boundless compassion. Every morning, while walking for alms along a dusty red road, his footsteps would always pause before a frail, sickly beggar who lay gasping for breath beneath an ancient Bodhi tree. Day after day, the young monk would pour the entirety of his meager food from his alms bowl for the beggar, hoping to alleviate some of the misfortunes of a human life. In the early days, the beggar would join his palms in gratitude, his eyes brimming with tears of choked emotion. However, as time passed like a shadow flickering past a window, the initial gratitude gradually faded, replaced by a sense of natural entitlement. The man no longer bothered to look for work or scavenge for fallen scraps. He simply lay idly under the tree, waiting for the familiar sight of the saffron robe. Then one day, the monk fell seriously ill and could not go on his alms round. The beggar waited from dawn until the shadows of dusk, his stomach growling with hunger, until a sense of resentment and bitterness began to fester. He stormed straight into the monastery, hurled insults, and stole the gold-plated alms bowl from the altar to pawn it for liquor. The monk's master witnessed the entire event, only sighing softly as he stroked the head of his disciple, who was drowning in shock and agony. He gently taught him, compassion without the eyes of wisdom is called blind mercy. Loving someone without knowing how to love unintentionally pushes that fragile life into the abyss of dependency and bottomless greed. That simple story lights a lighthouse for a profound and eternal Buddhist philosophy, the union of compassion and wisdom. Compassion is a mercy as vast as the ocean, embracing all suffering sentient beings. Wisdom is the clear insight that penetrates cause and effect, like sunlight dispelling the mists of ignorance. These two must always go together, supporting each other like the wings of a bird. Deprived of one, the bird will forever struggle amidst the storms of life, staggering and falling into the mire of ignorance and suffering. Walking slowly along the riverbank, where the eternal karmic consequences flow turbulently, one suddenly wonders what is truly good and what is truly evil. The boundary between these two concepts is often as fragile as a morning dewdrop perched on a blade of grass, waiting to vanish when the first ray of sunlight appears. Since ancient times, people have often simplified matters, believing that giving money, food, or a smile is good, while taking away or coldly refusing is evil. But karma does not operate on the surface of phenomena. It is entangled in the deep roots of intention and subsequent consequences. There are actions that stem from brilliant, beautiful intentions, yet their conclusion sows seeds of bitterness and sorrow, withering a person's will. Conversely, there are refusals that appear cruel and indifferent on the outside, but deep within, they are a great salvation, a necessary push to awaken a sleeping soul. Therefore, good is not merely the act of easy giving. Evil is not just a plot to cause harm. Sometimes, innocence in performing good deeds is the very source of evil karma, creating deep wounds in the souls of both the giver and the receiver. Observe the objects and phenomena around us to see the Dhamma operating silently yet powerfully. Standing before a seedling, struggling to emerge from its shattered seed coat, if you pity its weakness and use your hands to peel away each piece of the shell to shield it from every passing breeze, that sprout will never be able to thrust its roots deep into the earth. That young tree will be frail and limp, collapsing before the first rainstorm hits. If you help a butterfly break its cocoon to emerge earlier than destined, its wings will be forever withered and soaked, stripping away a free being's right to soar through the deep blue sky. Creation always has its own way of operating, interwoven between harshness and tolerance. Taoist masters understood this principle, always emphasizing the balance of yin and darkness, following nature, practicing non-action, yet leaving nothing undone. Helping people is the same. It requires a profound stillness to avoid disturbing the laws of heaven and earth. Should we help people indiscriminately? The question echoes with a color of sorrow, but is saturated with a staggering awakening. No. Indiscriminate helping is no longer sowing good seeds. It is a violent interference in another person's flow of karma. Every sentient being, from the moment they utter their first cry upon entering this temporary realm, carries on their shoulders a unique baggage of karmic consequences. They must complete their own lessons and experience bitterness themselves to refine their souls. Suffering, poverty, failure, or illness are sometimes the powerful catalysts for them to awaken, to learn the lessons of self-reliance, gratitude, or the law of cause and effect. When you reach out to rescue someone flailing in the quagmire of laziness or vice without accompanying it with awakening and education, you are only temporarily pulling them out of a momentary discomfort. Deep down, that easy assistance has robbed them of a golden opportunity to accept their own consequences, to grow through the pain of transformation. Oftentimes, we need to turn inward and question our own hearts when doing good. Do we help others out of genuine pity from the depths of our souls, or to satisfy our own small, proud egos? The feeling of being a good person, surrounded by a crowd cheering and praising, can sometimes be a soothing addiction. It creates a demagogic illusion of greatness and power. There are moments when people give blindly and hastily, only to trade for peace of mind against a secretly gnawing conscience, or to seek some distant, glorious merit in a future life of the cycle of reincarnation. That is absolutely not pure compassion. It is merely a sophisticated barter disguised in the holy mantle of those who trade in merit. Recall the period thousands of years ago when the Buddha and his Sangha practiced alms rounds along the misty rural roads. Each barefoot step on the dust was a silent, tranquil sermon. Receiving a bowl of rice or a jar of water was not merely to nourish the illusory physical body, but a ritual of sowing virtuous seeds, creating a supreme opportunity for the donor to plant the seeds of untainted merit. The relationship between the giver and the receiver back then was infinitely pure, filled with the light of equality and mindfulness. There was no condescending pity from above looking down, and no groveling demand from below looking up. Returning to look at our churning reality, the frantic pace of life drags along countless broken and scarred lives. Volunteer movements bloom everywhere in brilliant colors, but hidden behind those beautiful, tear-evoking gestures, stories of bitterness and heartbreak are not rare. Material wealth and money given in the wrong place, given to souls not yet ready to reform, suddenly become a ruthless fire that incinerates the last thin shreds of conscience. There are those who turn society's pity into a parasitical way of life, exploiting kindness to evade responsibility for their own lives and families. Compassion, lacking wisdom at this point, unintentionally condones the growth of evil and cowardice. Evil karma thus multiplies, binding both the giver and the receiver in a cycle of resentment and obligation with no end. The river of karma flows tirelessly through the ages, silently carrying the sediments of human joy and sorrow. Standing before that rushing river, hastily throwing in a large stone with the desire to block the flow, might instead create fierce whirlpools that sink innocent boats passing by. One deeply needs a profound stillness to stand on the bank and observe, to understand which stream or mountain this water originates from, and which deserted sea it will flow toward. For this reason, compassion and wisdom in parallel remains the compass illuminating 10,000 paths of action. Wisdom lights the way for compassion so that love does not go astray. When encountering a starving body by the roadside, giving them a piece of bread to survive the crisis is compassion. But after their stomach is full, teaching them how to knead dough to make bread, or pointing them to a wasteland to sow their own barley seeds, that is compassion with wisdom. Furthermore, if it is clearly known that a person has healthy limbs and a strong physique, but due to laziness and a love for indulgence, holds out their hand to beg, then a headshake of refusal is sometimes the greatest act of awakening. That cold refusal may cause them to be angry, to curse, and to be resentful in the present moment. But perhaps the extreme hunger and the sense of humiliation will drive them to the wall, forcing them to stand up on their own and seek a livelihood with their own hands and mind. That decisive action pulls them out of the comfortable mire of cowardice. Wisdom, in the light of Buddhist and Taoist teachings, is not a collection of dry, cold, academic, worldly knowledge, but a thorough understanding of impermanence and the chain of dependent origination and cessation. Looking at an object or phenomenon, one does not merely skim the surface of the undulating waves, but sees through to the bottom of the ocean to the deep-seated causes that created it. Looking at a person struggling in suffering, one sees the invisible mass of karma they are carrying. sees the ugly seeds they have intentionally or unintentionally sown in the past that are now breaking their shells to bear bitter fruit. To see is to empathize, not to judge or despise. To see is not to hate, but also not to interfere in a rash or impulsive manner. One simply, patiently accompanies them, radiating pure energy of peace and offering suggestions so they may light their own torches and find the emergency exit for their own souls. A person with an awakened consciousness walks through the world with a warm heart full of love and a cool, clear head for that very reason. The water in the river is clear and cool, eternally irrigating and nurturing all things on both banks. But that gentle and tolerant water never forces itself to flow upward to the high branches, nor does it foolishly reach out to try and extinguish the sun's fire burning high above. Water just flows peacefully according to the terrain, whether curved or flat. The trees along the bank know how to stretch their roots deep into the moist soil to draw water for survival. The mutual generation and overcoming among all species take place in a rhythmic, silent, and grand harmony. If humans know how to observe nature and apply that principle of non-action to human conduct, they will shed so many burdens of sorrow they have taken upon themselves. There is no need to strain to transform into the great savior of the entire world. Nor is there a need to frantically patch every hole in this suffering mundane realm. One only needs to light the candle of wisdom in the hidden corners of one's own soul, keeping that flame burning persistently and peacefully, then spreading the warmth to places that truly need it and to people who are truly destined to receive it. The journey of being human through this illusory realm of existence is ultimately just a journey of self-cultivation, self-enlightenment, and self-healing. Helping others, no matter how noble the meaning, is in the end a marvelous means to clean the house of one's own consciousness, wiping away the layers of dust of selfishness and greed. But do it. Reach out your hand with clear eyes that do not care for fame or profit, do not expect gratitude, and do not cling to what the results of tomorrow will be. Give as serenely as an anonymous flower, silently smiling in the deep forest or high mountains. It is not brilliant because someone watches and praises, nor is it wilted and dejected because of the absence of applause. All things were born already carrying the beauty of wholeness within them. Only when boundless compassion blends perfectly with the brilliant light of wisdom will we have enough courage and peace to stand firmly on the bank of the river of karma. Watching every change, floating, arising and ceasing taking place before our eyes, while our hearts remain peaceful and at ease, without a hint of agonizing sorrow. The help given in that moment of stillness is like a cool breeze blowing across the world, soothing bleeding wounds while leaving absolutely no trace of binding or entanglement for either oneself or others. That is truly the ultimate, primordial, and purest good. That is the realm of absolute freedom, strolling leisurely between the two shores of the illusory and the real, which every wandering soul yearns to reach throughout thousands of cycles of samsara.